Let's say hello to Bomani Jones. ESPN Right Time is the podcast. We got season 2 coming up. Game Theory. What, 2 weeks?
2 weeks from today. I just realized how ridiculous I look in a CAA sports hoodie right now.
Oh, you're such a company man.
I really wasn't thinking about being on camera today. I look like a total shill.
Yeah, you're a company man. Welcome to the dark side, Bomani. Welcome to the dark side. All right, so what's your ultimate takeaway from what happened Monday night, where I'm pretty sure we literally saw a man die on a football field before he was resuscitated, to where we are today?
I mean, where we are is where we were always going to be, which was the world was going to keep on spinning. Like, I think that's a little bit of an uncomfortable thought for a lot of people as this went on. But that was terrifying what happened on Monday, and unlike anything that anyone had ever seen, and it was fairly traumatic just for regular people. I can only imagine what it was for the people who, were actually there and involved and know the people who were there. But once he started showing signs of life, immediately it was like, "Whoo, football on Sunday."
Well,
he's not dead. If he would have been able to wiggle his thumb on the way off the field, we would have got started with that on Monday.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, I was joking with Giglio earlier. Like, there's the actual normal human process of your heart is full. Like, man, Damar Hamlin's alive. I mean, look at how, like, bless science, man. Like, everybody doing their job, everything, right? And then there's how I get my heart full, through cynicism. And that happened earlier today with one of our coworkers here, Lewis, who's a Cincinnati Bengals fan, talking about, man, we're getting screwed. We're getting screwed with this whole thing. What if we lose? Like, the Ravens going to have a better draft position than us? Like, what is going on here? I'm like, it's back. We're back to talking football, baby. Let's go.
Oh, yeah, I got a text from somebody who was 0.14 points away from a fantasy football championship, and all he needed was Joe Burrow basically to walk on the field.
Dude.
I mean, I guess he did do that. That did happen, but it wasn't enough.
No. What did I say earlier this week, Joe? The biggest of hand wanks for anybody who's complaining about fantasy football at this point. It's gambling. It's gambling. You gambled your money. This is what happens, okay?
Yeah, it's not about the gambling. It's about beating your friend.
I know. You don't want to be the guy who's stuck in a Waffle House for 24 hours. Is that what this is?
You don't want to be the guy on the other side of this.
True.
Who is talking endless smack to you because you didn't win in fantasy football because somebody almost died.
Yeah, fair. Fair.
Bomani Jones, The Right Time is the podcast, ESPN, HBO joining us here on the OG. Bo, where do you now stand with this? The potential for the neutral site AFC Championship game, and it just seems like they threw their hands up in the air. But I don't hate this as a solution.
Yeah, no, I'm not giving the efficacy of the solution any thought, to be honest. They couldn't win. Like, this was a really, really tricky situation. They had to come up with something. I thought the move was just to call it a tie and do everything you ordinarily do under those circumstances when there was a tie. Like, that seemed to me to be probably the most simple thing that they could do. But if they weren't going to do that, they had to come up with something. I don't know who's going to play when, where, how, none of that stuff. I'll find out AFC Championship game weekend, I suppose.
Bomani Jones, ESPN Right Time is the podcast. Game Theory HBO comes out in season 2 comes out in 2 weeks. If you missed any of this conversation, you can check it out on the Best of the OG podcast. I want to tap into local Bomani here for a second. You know I love talking to local Bomani. Let's go back to your radio show here, and you'd open up the phone lines, and you want the craziest sports parent stories, like the craziest youth parent stories, right? And somebody calls you up, and I'm like, well, I got a story for you. So the coach didn't play my kid, didn't give him the right amount of minutes. So I complained to the organization that, I was roommates with his wife at the time, and let me tell you what he did back then. And that's why my boy should get some playing time. Except that I'm not talking about youth sports. I'm talking about the U.S. men's national soccer team. Claudio Reyna, his wife, Berhalter, the coach, and his wife, and a connection when they were at Carolina, and it's all unfolded to one of the messiest weeks I've seen in sports gossip, man. What is going on here?
I mean, let's not leave this part out. They were putting the word out on the street that the young man was a little bit of a jerk. And wow, how could that have ever happened under these circumstances with the set of influences that he seems to have around? This is the wildest thing I've ever seen. I just couldn't believe it. And part of what makes it so crazy is that it's not just that Mrs. Reyna did this. She didn't even try to be slick about it. Like, it wasn't like there was some leak or like some envelope that came without a return address to give this information. No, she put her face on it when she'd been asked about it. Mm-hmm. Well, I thought that he did something way worse when he was Claudio's age. And he, I was just, what in the world is going on here? Then it leads to the next question, which is Claudio Reyna angling to be the coach of the men's national team? Because Gio Reyna's 20 years old. In theory, you're going to have to put up with his nonsense for how many more cycles? I wouldn't want this job.
I think this is, again, I said this earlier in the week. You want to know why we're terrible at soccer? It's because we have these types of things that play.
We got too many rich people by proportion who play the game. Like, that's what the issue is. It's not even a race issue. It is a rich people issue because this is such a rich people move. Oh, what? Oh, how about this? You could show up at his house and fight him. Oh, no. Why do that when you could systematically destroy someone's life? Like, the idea that you outed your friend as a victim of domestic violence and the fact that this ultimately doesn't serve your son in any way, because I guarantee you his peers are looking at him like he's a sucker, and they should, because I don't see how he couldn't turn out to be a sucker if this is the house he came out of.
It's also, in addition to Rich, it's Claudio Reyna and his wife. They played. Claudio more accomplished than his wife in soccer, but she played for Carolina, so it's not like she was a slouch. But we have this idea, Bo, that I was a college athlete and my wife was a college athlete, so our son, he's just going to be, precious little Gio. He's going to be the best player on the national team when he grows up, and it's like,
no.
I mean, it sounds like from people who watch this little outfit more than I do, he was trending in that direction. I just can't. I would want no parts of ever coaching that team if he's on it, which means and I'm not the only person who would feel that way, which means that the door seems to be opening up for Claudio Reyna to become the coach of the men's national team, doesn't it?
Bomani Jones, ESPN, Right Time is a Podcast, Season 2, Game Theory, coming your way in 2 weeks. Going back to the NFL, I'm on board with Steve Wilks being the permanent head coach of the Carolina Panthers. I think if you look at what he was dealing with in Arizona, like, there was no real plan to keep him, or they got distracted by the shiny object of the Kyler Murray Cliff Kingsbury duo, and of course we see how that's played out. And then they made an interesting push for the NFC South with basically making lemonade out of what was left from the Matt Rule era. I would think that that's enough for either the Panthers or another team to say, hey, let's see what Steve Wilks can do in terms of buying, the buy-in he gets from the players with an actual plan to win for once. Or am I living in like too logical of a world right now?
Well, hold on. I feel like you left out a very significant detail.
What did I miss out?
Steve Wilks, who is suing the NFL for discrimination, he's done a lot to dare somebody not to give him a job under these circumstances. The thing is, it's very difficult for me to believe that he's the guy that David Tepper wants to have that job.
He does. Right? No, he doesn't. You can go back to the David Tepper press conference. He does not want him as the head coach.
No. Now, did he do enough that if he were retained, or that you could make the argument for retaining him? Yes. Is that a good enough reason to retain him? That becomes the question. Like, I don't watch them enough to know exactly how good a job he's doing, but I do know ain't nobody ever got a job because they deserved it, right? And the arguments for him keeping the job are that he did in fact deserve it, and that may be the case. But Tepper is going to want something that is a bit more marquee, a bit more box office. The question is, who's coming to take that job from David Tepper at this point? Or, better question, how much is David Tepper willing to pay? Because the coach salary game seems to be getting a little bit out of control here.
Yeah, thanks to David Tepper. Bomani Jones joining us.
It's off the books, though. You can thank Nebraska for that. It's good.
On the OG Bo, let's go back to local Bo, because you scoffed at my concept of NC State or North Carolina winning 10 or 11 games.
11 games.
No, just wait. Just wait. When you were growing up, TCU was, and you obviously followed Texas football, and I would assume by proxy the state of Texas. When you were growing up, TCU was awful. So what is the equivalent in North Carolina to TCU reaching the national championship game?
So the difficulty with putting it into context is it's still a fairly big school, but it's still also, relatively speaking, is a fairly small religious school. So Wake Forest is smaller than everything.
Right.
So it makes itself a difficult comparison, but it's not way off base to be like, this is Wake Forest actually making it to the Final Four. Like this is, I don't think the idea of TCU doing this is getting enough run. And the reason I say that is, you look, generally speaking, when people leave these smaller conferences and go to bigger ones, very few of them actually step up to the level of competition of the new conference. Like, you think about all those schools that left the Big East to go to the ACC or to go to other places. Virginia Tech had their nice little run, but what's it been after that run they had when they first got there? Miami never got up to the point of winning this. West Virginia in the Big 12. TCU went from like smaller conference affiliations than those, and it's in the national championship game. Like, it is the rare argument for the potential of parity in college football, the fact that they could get to where they are this year. Like, to me, it is a bit more miraculous, I think, than it's getting credit for being.
Yeah, in fairness, when I say you were growing up, I mean late 80s,
no.
90s, because in 2000 they had their first 10-win season, and then they've pretty much consistently since then, in the WAC, in CUSA, and then Mountain West, were double-digit win program, and then this is their one of their first real breakthroughs in the Big 12.
Yeah, but they've won the Big 12 before this.
Yes.
Like, most schools don't even get to a point of you can win the conference,
Yeah.
let alone winning 12 games or 13 games, I guess it is now, at the point that they are. Like, Gary Patterson got a statue, or if they haven't built the statue already, they need to, for what he did. But really stop and think. Like, Utah's another interesting example, leaving the Mountain West and actually getting to the point that they can win the Pac-12. But that really doesn't happen very often. Most of these schools move up and just become middle-of-the-pack teams in the new conferences that they go to.
Kind of like Texas is going to move up and be a middle-of-the-road team in the SEC.
Yeah, well, see, that one's going to be interesting. And the reason is, I think that going to the SEC is actually going to shame them into prioritizing winning football games over just trying to simply make money with the program. Because the difference with Texas going to the SEC that's different than TCU going to the Big 12 is that Texas has every institutional advantage of any SEC school. Right. They should, on paper, be the best school in the SEC.
Yes.
The right hire at head coach, and they can get to where that is. I didn't think it was possible for TCU to do this, but Texas, there's been nothing to incentivize them. I mean, they won the Big 12 3 times in the existence of the conference that started in 1996. And everything was kind of hunky-dory, more or less. That ain't going to be that way in the SEC, because they'll come out there and take some seriously embarrassing losses, and I don't think they're willing to do that.
So, speaking of embarrassing losses.
I was going to say, give them a Texas question there on their, I thought we were here to talk about Texas basketball.
I don't want to talk about Chris Beard. My friend Chris Beard, who was I saw Chris Beard's temper at the Final Four. We'll just put it that way.
That's right. I mean, he's a Bobby Knight guy, right?
Yeah. So, speaking of Texas, we'll stay in Texas. I guess Jimbo Fisher, with the contract that he has, can do whatever the hell he wants, including bringing in Bobby Petrino to be his offensive coordinator. That is a hell of a coaching staff. A hell of a coaching staff with Bobby Petrino as the OC and DJ Durkin as the defensive coordinator.
Yeah. There's no way in the world this is Jimbo Fisher's idea. None. His entire self-concept as a coach is wrapped around his offense, right? Like, he is a total football play call nerd. Mm-hmm. There's no way that he turned... Like, you're not just giving Bobby Petrino your playbook and saying, run it, right? That's not how this is going to work. There's no head coach that I could think of that would be brave enough, no matter how guaranteed your contract is, to bring Bobby Petrino in as your ace lieutenant, the least trustworthy man in the world. This just sounds like somebody told Jimbo, hey, man, some things about to change whether we owe you this money or not.
Mm-hmm. Are you surprised that Jimbo actually is going to... I guess the money is so good you'll still stay around rather than...
Something happened to motivate him to do this. That's the best way I can look at it. Now, the thing is, never has Bobby Petrino had this much talent to work with, ever. The closest you could give is like 03 at Auburn.
Yeah.
But he's never had this much talent. The thing about Petrino is the reason it always falls apart after Petrino leaves a job is he builds these rosters that only he can coach. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know what it looks like when he gets a roster that was built for somebody else to coach.
NC State's next head coach after he turns Texas A&M around? That'll be Bobby Petrino, right? No, I'm kidding.
Oh, there's no chance. There's no chance. I mean, well, actually, you tell me. Is there really no chance?
No, there's no chance. NC State's story is usually about the guy you could have had. I mean, Giglio reminded me that Sonny Dykes was in contention for the job that Dave Doran ended up getting. But
that's right. You guys are not happy with Dave Doran anymore.
We'll see what happens with this new offensive coordinator. How about that? They got a new offensive coordinator.
Looks like they're getting a new quarterback. Too.
Yeah, Brennan Armstrong could be leaving through the transfer portal to join NC State because his offensive coordinator. He's got experience with the offensive coordinator.
Hold on. Help me out, guys.
Yeah.
How many games did State win this year?
They won 8.
Wow. So you're telling me that a 8-win program won 8 games?
Well, yeah, but it's actually special in how it happened, Bomani, because they had 4 different quarterbacks win games against top 25 teams. You know how many top 25 games Drake May won at Carolina?
Guessing it's going to be 0.
0. So, yeah, I mean, NC State fans can spin. NC State fans have actually done a pretty good job spinning this season given the injuries and everything else. I'm actually impressed. Meanwhile, you got 2 9-win teams in Chapel Hill and Duke, in North Carolina and Duke, and 9 wins are not the same at each spot.
Dude, I was about to say, the best. There's nothing better than one of those years where the happiest football fans are in Durham.
Well,
it is always interesting. And look, what's the dude's name that took that Duke job? He was at A&M before. Okay, Elko. I was like, you must really want to be a head coach if you're going to take this job, right? Like the pitfalls of that job are just kind of intractable. It's really hard.
Sure.
You're never going to have a program that people locally are enthusiastic about because the locals aren't alums. Like, you're never going to be able to fix that problem. I would never have wanted to take that job. He came in there and wrecked shop, right? But Carolina fans, it's almost like I've been trying to tell you how this Mac Brown thing was going to go since day one.
And we'll leave it there. Bomani Jones, ESPN Right Time is the podcast. HBO's Game Theory. 2 weeks. 2 weeks from today. Very excited about it.
Now I'm about to get back to work.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say, you look like you've been working. We'll talk to you later, man.
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.